Did get a citizen request from Tyson Plasto. I think we may have reached out to some of the other council members at some point as well, but just about the home-based business ordinance with regard to woodwork, and there's a nuisance, a city nuisance. If it's done outside, but if it's done inside, then there is no nuisance, but then there are other concerns, probably fumes and things of that nature is what I gather, but the city code is 19.06.030.32 C34. So we have that ordinance. I did look at it and told them I would just bring it up. We could talk about it at another meeting. We don't have to discuss it in full today, but maybe we could take some time to look at it and see if we want to talk about it.
I remember speaking to Chad about it originally and gave some reasons why we have it the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'll pass this on to Tyson, but we can always talk about it more.
Is the concern that it's not strict enough or too strict?
Too strict.
Too strict. Yeah, it's almost like in one instance it's permissible, but in the other instance it's not for him to do a home business. So he could do his own personal woodworking, but if it were to be as a business, then it falls outside of the city code.
Okay.
So I told him that we want to make sure that kind of our goal is to make sure people can make money however they need to provide for their families, with some understanding that there are some activities too. Yeah, some activities just don't lend themselves to an easy solution.
It's not like you can't do it. You just may have to do a few things.
You have to do it off-site.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing it every day compared to, every other weekend or whatever, just
and I think
build something.
And I think with the business, I mean, you have to assume that that's going to be like their full-time, like 9 to 5 type of situation. Yeah. Whereas I don't think he even has mentioned that. I think he just wants to make a little bit on the side. But the code has to be based on, like, I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the code has to be based on is they're just doing that as their full-time endeavor, which is that's what the ordinance is directed to regulate.
And we had this very, I can't interject, but I wasn't aware of Tyson's concern, but we had the very same issue recently. It's been probably 3 or 4 months ago from a gentleman that made guitars. He made about 1 a year. He cut out the mold, and it took him about a year to do that. Everything else was by hand.
Right.
He's a former rock and roll guy, but there was Detroit Bay, I think, some big bands, very popular rock bands. But anyway, he was concerned about the same thing, and we went through the same process and indicated that it's not a business, full-time thing. And the impacts were less. We had the ability to be flexible and work with him. At the end of the day, he decided not to do it. But I think depending on, if we have a better understanding of what he's exactly doing and when, and there's some predictability to that, there may be opportunities to do it even within the existing structure. But
That's awesome.
I don't know if he's reached out to, Chad. Or
It wasn't Chad.
Yeah.
He spoke with,
Well, I think there's a lot of hobbyists out there that, that would apply to.
Were you on the planning commission when we reviewed?
I think not totally, but one of the things we had before is he talked.
We were one of the first things we did as council.
Staffers. So he just read the ordinance and said the ordinance doesn't allow it.
Yeah, that's why you guys are
Talk to Chad about
First thing
it, there's flexibility. You can tell us exactly what you're doing, and when you're doing it, and how you're doing it. Administratively can work with that, but so that'd be good if we could address that.
yeah, I think he didn't speak with Chad, he spoke with Zachary.
Zach, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's who he spoke with. And I think that's probably what happened. He probably just got the ordinance and, wanted to reach out because he does do this already, but not able to do it on a business basis.
Yeah, I'll follow up with Chad as well. It's the same. Zach was the young man who, he's a pretty new, but he talked with the other gentleman as well and just read what the ordinance was. And as we looked into it further, there was some flexibility. So I'll make Chad aware that Tyson will reach out to him.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll let you know.
I only do it now when the mayor tells me to.
Yeah, there's none allowed on 2200 West.
Yeah. That's, I'm working on it becoming its own country.
In order
I didn't
to
think
get
the
it,
county
so,
was, yeah.
The county wouldn't accept either.
It's Chris's country, is that the name of it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't divulge names.
Well, that's a good report though. Thank you for that. Anyone else?
Just a gratitude, Parks and Rec Commission expressed their gratitude to those who were able to come to the library, sorry. And it was, they counted about 400 people, so it was a great success.
173.
That's
Yeah,
good.
it's good.
463?
Cool. Yeah,
That's good.
There was a lot of people there.
there was a lot of
Mhm.
people.
For as small as that is, I think,
Yeah.
you know, people was working around it. They did a good job though organizing.
They really did, yeah, they
They had a lot of
set it up
direction.
good, and, yeah.
And then I'll do an announcement out there, but they're looking for high quality floats for the parade. So they're talking Liberty Days already, so.
I like the high quality
Yeah.
Oh, it's 2023.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I'll give you my stuff, show you.
I thought,
Last year you were in, and then when you were running, you were in the first part of obstacle, then you went back.
yeah, I jumped
I was
around.
about a block late when I got to my float.
We can figure things out if we need to this year.
Yeah, just keep going around, passing everybody.
Okay, anybody else? Anything else to say or comments or whatever? Well, gee, let's dive into our budget then.
Stalled.
And look at
You
that.
guys are all wishing you'd got more comments.
Can I say
We're
that?
trying.
Sure, yeah, hold on one second.
I mean, it's kind of the elephant in the room, but just about how much water we have. I know when we had our work meeting, or when we had our all-day budget meeting, we talked a little bit about flows, and we've had feet and feet of snow since then. So is there any update that we could pass on to the residents about maybe steps that we're taking as a city, or if there's anything we need to get out to the public?
Yeah, we just had, Steve can chime in as well, we just had an hour-long meeting this afternoon with Steve on the emergency preparedness side, and with all of our parks, not parks, but our public works people, Steve Jackson, Terry, Paul, Brett,
Oh,
who's our,
yeah,
and just got an update on what we're doing, what we're not doing. So we're basically working flooding issues 24/7. We've got a few areas where there are active issues. One's out west, and Dave's aware of it, in the Swift Creek area, or north of J&J. And it appears to this point, it appears that it's part of a field rain issue. It is the source, so we don't know for sure. It's coming off some of the fields to the north there. But we have they've done some research, and on Monday we're going to go in. Actually, they start tomorrow, and they're going to go in and dig. We're going to go dig and pipe some sections of, put in some new pipe that we think will capture that water and keep it out of the subdivisions. The houses, there's 6 or 7 houses down there that have had.
so did that back up onto Cold Creek? Because I noticed the guys were working Cold Creek and that other,
That's just where they're pumping it out of
oh,
Swift
okay,
Creek.
system.
all right.
It's on Swift Creek.
Yeah.
So, but
Cold Creek's where they're gonna put in the pipe.
they've been running sumps out there. We've been checking 24/7. I think they had 3 sumps running. So I think the worst home, as they explained today, had about 4 inches in their basement. And now they're down to about an inch. They're keeping it down, so it's carpet damage. We've notified the cleanup folks. Steve was notified, and so they're involved in helping as well. Again, we don't know the source. We think it's again, sometimes when Tyson would know, out west there's a lot of, in the ag, there's a lot of field drains, some of them buried, some of them not, and sometimes there's development, those are crushed or moved or broken, and there's people don't know where they go and where they come from. And then when you have an event like this, that we don't have a lot of water in the ground, then you're typically not an issue. But years like this, those things present themselves. So that's getting actively worked. There's a series of houses up just north of the temple site that we're having some issues. They're not, one of our employees lives up there, But my understanding today was that issue has been alleviated by simply going in and, because of some of the where the houses were faced, they had snow that had accumulated that was right up against their homes. And so they were instructed to go with the shovels and pull that snow away from their foundations, pull it out a little bit. And that basically flooding has stopped. So that's one of the things we're trying to educate people about. Public Works is actually doing a video. We put it out on social media, but sometimes a picture's worth 1,000 words and make it inviting and so forth. And so they're close to having a video that'll go out from Public Works that'll talk about some of these things you can do to take care of yourself. Actively promoting sandbags. We have a lot of customers come in for sandbags. The county's doing the same thing. We also, just as a little bit of a sidebar, we had a gentleman who was coming in repeatedly to get free sandbags, and then was turning around and selling them to people, and so for $5 or $6 a bag, and so we had a talk with him and explained that doesn't work, and so he's taken them off. He was advertising them on the Layton Citizens Facebook, so now he's still got them up in Ogden, but not there. So interesting times bring out interesting people. But
Does he live at the end of a cul-de-sac?
I don't know where he lives,
I just wonder, maybe we could put a little more snow there.
but we have had, you may have heard of this or may have not, we've had a landslide or
That's what I was gonna bring up.
hillside failure. Doesn't affect any homes. It's up in Chadwick Farms, the hill up there going north on East Gentile, Oak Hills, excuse me, from Fairfield up, taking on, there's a big hollow up through that, Temple's on the right, they call on the left, up, part way up the, I don't know exactly how many feet it is up from where the temple is, where the Y is, on that left-hand side. There's a spark that's developed there. Actually, two of them. There was one that started earlier in the week, and then there's another one started today. That area, when those homes were built, they went through a geotechnical process, and there were requirements that there be appropriate setbacks, and that was followed. So we don't think at this point in time there's any danger to structures. It's further south.
Isn't the one on the city property?
Yes, it comes down into the city.
The debris is coming
It's
to
come
city
down,
property,
okay, yeah.
it's not city property, it's soil, yeah.
We're not having any problem with the road then, are we?
No.
Like
No,
up
it's in it.
by the golf course there?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. So there's two property owners that may be affected, or I guess parts of the yard are affected. But one of those is out of town. We haven't been able to contact them. We don't know if they're on spring break or where they're at. We've had dialogue with the other gentleman, his wife, that are currently there. We think because there was running water when we went up and looked at it, some of that could just be coming out of the hillside. Some of it may be because downspouts on houses were connected. That's what happens sometimes when they have these slopes. People aren't supposed to, but I'm not saying they did, but they'll put those underground and then carry them out to the toe of the slope, and that's where they'll end them. Well, that's when you have an event with this much water, that's where they typically give, is at the top of the slope, if that makes sense. So one gentleman indicated that it used to be that they put in a swimming pool and a sports cart, and they said that when they did that, they discontinued those drains. So we don't know. That's just what they're representing. So, but Mike and Paul Bauer from the inspection have been up and interacted with him, and then our public works people have been up and looked. So it does appear to be moving based on today a little bit, creeping to the north, but it's still, they said it's probably 110 feet
From that.
away from the home. I don't know if their sport car will be affected or not, but hopefully with the warm weather and a little care, it'll hold there. But that whole hillside, that low area, just not in recent years, but years ago, we had the landowner that was continuing, and developers were continually trying to develop that whole face And the bottom of it, and the whole thing's full of geotechnical problems, and the city never acquiesced, and we said, it's undevelopable. It's because of this very reason, so it's, the county, we've interacted with the county consistently, almost every day we're interacting with Adam Wright, who's their public works foreman. They're being very deliberate on the channels, trying to keep the channels clear. They've done a good job. They have people stationed at different locations to try to make sure there's no debris that accumulates. Right now, none of the creeks are running sufficiently high to pose any risk of taking any of the structures out. Again, we need to make sure that they're kept clean so you don't have debris coming down that can block it. And then that could create a problem pretty quickly. But they'll continue to just chase it 24/7, basically, and respond to calls. We have had several individual, you can speak to this better than I, people that are hoping the city can do something, but it's not tied with our system per se. It's just groundwater that's so saturated that it's coming through their foundations if they have cracks or so forth. And so we're not unsympathetic to those, but we're not treating those the same way in terms of city responsibility as we are with if we have a land drain system that's plugged or a storm drain system or something that's plugged.
It's supposed to be like 65 degrees on Saturday.
Yeah. And then next week, it's supposed to be in the 60s. So I think next week is going to be our week that we're going to see a lot of.
Well, yeah, and we talked a little bit about that as well, and we had an emergency management meeting yesterday for the county, and they say actually we're okay as long as we don't hit the 80s. It's 60s, even into the low 70s, okay, as long as it still cools off at night. And because we hit the 80s and the upper snow begins to melt, and we want slow warming, so we hit the lower levels, which are where the real record snowfall is.
Well, Public Works got that one down by me, because I got a phone call. So I thought, oh, I better get over. And by the time I got there, they had the pump set up for pumping it out. I mean, they were right on it, and there was, I don't know how many, there were 6, 7 homes that got some water. Some got more than others did. It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, Terry and Paul, of course, have been here a long time. And they said they've never seen anything like that.
Yeah.
That was coming out. They said it looked like you had a 12-inch pressure water main broke. That's how much water was coming into onto the properties. And he said, for an unpressurized system, he said it was unbelievable. Somebody would have told me that would look like that. I would have not believed him. But
And it was all clear water.
yeah, it was clear water.
Yeah, it was clear. I mean, when I was there, they were smiling. I mean, because it was filling the 6-inch blue hose. I mean, it was full coming out. I mean, and mud quit.
How long has the pumps been running? How long have they been running?
I think they said 3 days.
Yeah.
3 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3 days.
A week.
So we bought some more pumps. We have several of them. We bought some more, and they've been running 24/7. Our guys go down and check and make sure the gas stays in them. And so we think with this, engineering's been involved in it. They think they've got a good plan to catch it at certain points upstream and divert it into some manholes. Actually, put a new manhole in one of the roads and get it into our storm drain system and re-divert it. And then we'll try to figure out, after that, we'll go back and try to figure out through smoke and other kind of things where it's coming from. We can put a smoke in the pipes that come out of certain places that we can tell you where right now there's too much water. The pipes are full, so you can't run something up to smoke. It'll just get pushed down. But the main thing is to stop the damage, and then we'll go figure out what happened after the fact. But
Thank you.
Weaver Basin there was a meeting today. I wasn't able to go because of a development meeting, but unexpected. But they did give a report about that and said that this is from Weaver Basin Water. They do their annual customer agency discussion. They were talking about the massive snow, which we all know, peak, but they said something similar, I think, was if the temperatures stay reasonable here lower, or even in the 60s, we shouldn't have an issue. Like Steve said, if you get in the 80s, then it'll bring that upper snow. He said the upper snow is about normal, but it's the mid to lower snow which has been so significant. So they don't want those to all come off at the same time. If the lower and middle snow comes off gradually, they think they may be okay. But I asked our folks, point blank, based on your experience and history, do you see any problems? Barring something really strange, do you see any issues? And they said, no, we think we're good. The county's being very aggressive. We're trying to be very aggressive. Homeowners will, use judgment and make sure they know where their downspouts are going. One issue, I'm talking too much, but one issue that people do need to be aware of is sometimes they'll take their sump pumps, they're pumping out of their basement or wherever they're getting water in their house, and they think a good place to dump it, they just see a manhole, and so they try to put it in a manhole, and it's a sewer instead of a storm drain. That's a bad thing to do, because the sewer systems are not built to take that kind of surface runoff, and so we're trying to put out information about that. If you do that, you're likely to back up not only your own home, but back up your neighbor's home. And most sanitary sewer lines are standard as an 8-inch line, so it doesn't have a lot of volume. So people shouldn't be doing that anyway. You've got to put it in the curb or contact us and we can tell them how to put it in a storm drain. But that is one of the dangers they were talking about today, is people just need to be wise about where
The burden of water.
putting the water, or they'll create another, creates an issue down at the plant. It creates an issue here, and if you get a clean versus dirty water, if you put that and overflow the sewer systems and you get it back up, it's not their water, obviously.
That's right.
So the damage to your home is significant, so try to educate that.
Well, they also were doing potholes. I saw them today. There's one on 2200 that I've hit every night. But anyway, they were filling it up, so somebody either must have called or whatever, but I asked him, and he says, no, we're going around. That was kind of,
Is that
we got a good group of people,
Yeah.
We do.
yeah, we really do.
Okay, we good? I want to give Tracy enough time to
Okay.
cover as much as he wants here.
Well, I want to buzz through basically all the enterprise funds and the special revenue funds. We'll hit it at kind of a high level, and if you have questions, you can let me know. So we have the water fund. What I'm presenting in each of these slides is where we ended up, actual on the left, fiscal year 22, our estimate for the current year, fiscal year 23, and then what's proposed for fiscal year 24. Some variances on those. For example, on this one, if you look at the capital line that has a variance of 2.4 million, that's a project line, right? And the project amount in 23, 10 million, that number is actually a carryover of uncompleted projects in 22 and then to 23, because they're still budgeted in there. I guess one of the things to point out, and I have a couple other slides about water, just because we've talked about it, but I would anticipate, one, we have an effect here between 22 and 23 on the revenue, because there was the 15% increase that was approved that went into effect July 1st, started seeing its effect in the billing in August, September, October. And so, that's helped our revenue side. This number of 10 million was more like 12.5 million before all of the restrictions. You'll remember we went down about $1.8 million when all those restrictions went in over, I think that was the 21 and 22 water years that go from April to October. But I would anticipate, talking about all this snow that's out there, we've already started receiving some calls from people about other things, but then they make comments about there better not be any restrictions this summer, so who knows how people will react. I'm financially, I'm still kind of leaning towards people have figured out that they don't need as much water as they were using before.
Hopefully.
And so, it may take a while to recover back some of that revenue. And, that was part of the reason to do the rate increase was actually a hope that people would conserve water. On the reserve side, net assets we call in this kind of fund, at the end of 22, unrestricted balance was 15 million. That was on purpose. and we spent a number of years building that up because we knew we had some big projects, which is what, here's 10 million of it there. We'll anticipate that the end of 23 we'll be at 11 million, and then by the end of 24 we'll be at 7.9 million. And that may seem like still a mountain of money when really it's not. It's a good amount of money, but we also have, $5, $6, $7 million projected over the next 5 to 10 years each year. So there's a need for that. This $1 million that sits here separate is the $1 million we've been setting aside for the utility billing cashier solution. So any questions about anything on this? I'll just that's the first one. I'm just gonna roll through them. If you have a question, just stop me.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
During the legislative session, there was money set aside or given to us for connect the reservoirs.
Right.
Part of the projects, $5 million. What is that?
I don't have it built in here yet because we don't have it yet. And so you'll see a budget amendment with that money when it comes in. But I didn't build it into the normal.
So I guess my question, maybe we can talk about it then, but how much of that money would be used for projects already on the list?
It would be, probably for all of them. Yeah, and so this number here
It'll grow.
will grow. And that will be good because then it can cover the next year, 25, I think there's 5 or 6 million, 26, there's 5 or 6 million, 27, there's 3 or 4 million. And so there's still a large list of projects.
When do you think we'll have that?
I think Steve told me it wasn't gonna be before August.
Yeah, my understanding was that the program or the structure that would allow, the authorization, not authorization, the creation of the program that will disperse this money and make it available won't be created until August. So I don't know if then there's a little bit of delay once they stand it up, if it'll be a month or two before you'll start pushing the money out. But that's the reason we didn't do it. We know there's been a commitment, where the program hadn't even been created to deliver it. We thought it'd be a little conservative and not put it here and then just add it when it came. But
We don't even have one in hand, let alone two in the bush, huh? You just have Gary saying, yeah, hey,
Go get some money.
all right.
I have a question about the estimated contributions from developers and transfers. Why is that estimated so low for 23 and 24?
Contributions from developers and transfers, that number doesn't really amount to anything until, these are final numbers. And so this is all of the water infrastructure that was contributed from developers in that year. So this number will grow, but it doesn't really do anything for us reserve or cash wise, because our reserves, I only put on the part that we could spend. The other part of the reserve is our reserve for capital assets, which is just, that's not spendable money. It's just, so when we get those contributions, they come in on our income statement, but really they just go onto our balance sheet later, so. Okay, so just some side note things about consumption, and I'll send these slides over to you so you can see them, but you can see 21's consumption compared to 22, and kind of it leveled off a little bit here in August, and then actually went up a little bit in October as far as consumption goes. Anyway, just more FYI type stuff, and some other things that I got from Steve. Green and down to me don't really correlate, but it does when you're talking about consumption. And ultimately in 2022, April through October, we were compared to what they had projected, we were down 1.2 billion gallons of water. So we've talked about that a few different times, how commendable that is for people to react. But when we're talking about budget and finance, it's not necessarily a good thing. So on the stormwater fund, revenue should stay consistent. One area that's across all of these utilities, impact fees, those are affected because the building's down, and we talked about that in the general fund when we had our all-day meeting as well. The building permits side being down. But all in all, the reserves in the stormwater fund remain healthy and strong and should be able to support the projects that are projected at least in the next 5-year plan. So we should be good there. In the sewer fund, again, revenues staying consistent. The big operational fees here, obviously for treatment, most of the amount of money that we bring in, we pass through to the sewer district. One thing that maybe we were a little concerned about, and I'm not sure, maybe we just, here you can see we've cut back on projects a little bit in this from 23 to 24. And so our reserves have stayed at a reasonable level. I was thinking maybe 2 years ago that by now we would be wanting to increase our side of the sewer rate. Out of that entire sewer rate, we only collect, I think it's about $9 for the city to operate our side of the sewer system. But as long as these reserves stay reasonable, then I think, at least for this 24 year, we'll be fine to leave our fees where they're at.
These revenues for sewer and stormwater, they're pretty static, right? Because it's not like based on usage, it's just,
Right.
It's just, you just sign up and then you get it.
Yeah, it's a flat fee. Yeah. And I don't know if there's been any discussion, I haven't heard from the sewer district if they're planning to raise their fees anytime soon again. We went through a series of like 5 or 6 years where they did it every year significantly, so.
Is our contribution a percentage of theirs, or is it this flat $9?
Ours is just a flat amount.
Flat, yeah.
And they pay us the whole amount.
Pardon?
They pay us the whole amount. The end user pays the city the whole amount. And
Then we pay them.
pay the,
My question is if they raise their rates as a percentage, are they collecting more for us? But it's
Their increases were so significant for a few years, I think we kind of didn't dare raise our side of it, and we still had, okay reserves, so we left it alone, just because of the way it would affect the bill from citizens.
In this year's capital request, there were no requests that we didn't recommend, so that they didn't ask for anything over the 410. So I think we're pretty good shape. There's some basic maintenance to slip line. There's always pieces of systems going down. But as far as any major project, I think we're pretty good stead right now. So nice not to be in a crisis mode.
We have our regular replacement, whatever.
Yeah, we do surveys every year about, try to assess the quality, and if there's any issues, trouble spots, and try to be aggressive about doing those. So we set aside that kind of money, and that's basically to replace sections when some we know about, and some are when we got emergency,
We'll find
we
out.
have money to do it. And we do a lot of slip lining too, where we don't replace the pipe, we're gonna pull, I was gonna say polyurethane, but it's basically a plastic liner through a metal pipe, and you extend the life of the pipe. It's got cracks and stuff in it. It's much cheaper to slip line it. The machine will push that through there. It doesn't, it removes just a tad of the capacity, but it prolongs the life and makes sure you don't have leaks, keeps roots out of it. And that's been a cost-effective way. We try to be pretty aggressive in that, in areas where we think we may have problems, and it avoids just paying a lot more money to tear up, concrete pipe and put it in again, so.
And each of these funds has maintenance money for a lot of that kind of stuff that they do every year in different areas. Street lighting fund, no proposed increase in there. We've built up a pretty good reserve in that fund. Again, like Alex just mentioned, the projects that have been recommended, 484,000 worth, were, recommended on to you as well, or being forwarded to you, so there wasn't anything that Public Works has recommended that Alex has not recommended. And
So hopefully this year, more of the residents will see the streetlights in the areas, because I know that, but we go and plan that, and then a major project will come up unexpectedly, and then we don't have an opportunity to put them in the way we wanted.
Right.
Yeah, there's
So,
there's 120,000 of that that's set aside for just miscellaneous places across the city. We've got in that 120,000, I look at the sheet here, it'll put in 15 of the SLO2s, which are the standard subdivision lights, and 5 of the SLO4s. And then the other areas, these have some specific areas. One's on 2700 West, the new road out west, from the West Davis Corridor interchange, which is this further south point, and up to Layton Parkway. So there's a 40,000 to put 4 lights along there. And then Gordon Avenue, there's a plan to put in from between Fort Lane and Fairfield on both sides of Gordon. There's a proposal to put in 11 SLO4s on there. And there's also a Gordon Avenue sidewalk project that's going to be in that area as well. They'll tie that in and try to do that at the same time. And then on 3650 West, 3650 runs north and south, just north of Legacy Junior High out west. West Yoakovo goes and actually turns into Syracuse. At the intersection, it runs north to Gordon and has run south. So it's along that 3650. I assume that northern piece that was just put in a few years ago with the lights, 8 lights along there. So, but we have existing roads. We have a smattering of kind of regional collector type roads as well as in subdivisions as well. At least that's what's planned. You certainly can correct us otherwise, but that's.
Well, I think the subdivisions is what I think we need
Yeah,
to
well, those-
make sure we do, because that's when
That
most
one's-
feedback when people are paying for it and they want it in their neighborhood.
Yeah, the one leads down to the junior high.
Yes.
Of those houses.
Yeah, and that's an area where I mean, all of those areas are very well managed.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Clint about this, but I remember how low this fund was before the increase. So it's just nice to see it. I mean, it's
Stabilized.
yeah, big time. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Great. The refuse fund, that will just continue growing a little bit as we add more residences and things, and there's not really any kind of a rate increase proposed in there. All in all, pretty flat. This one's planned to go down a little bit each year just based on the way the contract works. The contract goes up a little bit each year, and so we built that in originally so that we only had to raise the rates once every five-year contract, right?
So when's this one up?
What was that?
When is this contract?
Contract up. I think we have 2 more years in this contract.
And that was, you guys renegotiated that not too long ago, right?
Right.
Waste management.
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago.
Waste Management raised their rates last year, didn't they?
What was that, sorry?
Did Waste Management just raise their rates last year?
It wasn't last year when we did. I think it was the year before that. So we might have 3 years left on that contract. It was like a year-long process, so I get confused with you. In the pool fund, making some estimates there, and
Association.
they have a couple of projects on the list that we discussed the other day down at the meeting. Playground, and I apologize, I don't recall what the other one was that makes up the difference on that, about 20-something thousand. But that'll eat up a little bit of the reserve that we've retained in that fund. That reserve in that fund is a little bit artificial anyway because we're putting a transfer over to that fund. But traditionally, we have liked to keep a little bit of money in there in case, they've had, over the last 5 years, they've probably had a big thing about every year. And I don't want to spend a bunch of time on it because I know Dave's coming over to talk to you at the next meeting we have about pool-related things. So, but we've had the boiler and air handlers and basically it's old, so there's always something, right?
Well, I think that it's important to see the trend line of the transfer from the general fund too, because I think there's this idea from the people who care really a lot about this issue that this is just like this just unfunded liability that just keeps going up, and it's been around the same figure pretty much our whole time here, at least. You can see it right there. It's projected to do that for next year too. And I just think that that's pretty amazing considering it's not getting any younger.
Yeah.
Things aren't less expensive than they were 3 years ago, so good job to the
I think when I started here 11 years ago, so it was about 400 to 450 then. So, I mean, that's a long time and it hasn't really climbed that much. That's a good point to make. I mean,
Well, we're praying for a big wind again. Take the top off.
Red light.
Well, well, the thing is, the insurance paid for it. So we got another 5 to 10 years of life out of it because of the wind.
That's what the song said. The greatest.
The other issue there was, in the capital, the other issue was a backup generator. And so that would allow, right now, we have a generator that will keep the bubble up in the event of electricity going off, but it doesn't provide power to Parks and Rec. So now we're looking at putting in a bigger one that will run the bubble, but also provide power. So if power goes off, we can still provide customer service and sign up kids for this and that, in the Parks and Rec office itself. So that was a good one.
under emergency medical, got a couple of ambulances that they're gonna remount with that 523, we talked about that the other day. Their rates seem to go up a little bit, and I believe Kevin was, if I'm remembering the conversation right, he was telling me that their rates were scheduled to go up a little bit again, so we'd anticipate a little more revenue there. We talked the other day about this transfer because the paramedic service went away from the county, so then we take some of our general fund property tax and transfer it over to the MS fund to keep them whole. Before, they were receiving about $850,000, and so we were actually getting a little more out of that contract deal that we had. Now, if we just look at what the actual citizens of Layton are providing in that, then it's around this amount. This number I presented, but don't get too excited about it because I'm still working on their reserve. It becomes a difficult number. I think I already talked about this before too, but because of the way the retirement system funds through here, the reserve ends, when we apply all the accounting rules, the reserve looks big. What I'm anticipating is that when we get to the end of this fiscal year and we get a new report from the retirement system, it's going to take a big chunk out of there. So it's kind of I've never heard an accountant use the word fictitious number, but it's not a number I like. So, oh great, I'm sitting next to Steve. And any of those big lines that we're going to use, enforcement, again, I'll go ahead.
Did we hire somebody for Karen?
She just started this week.
Oh, okay.
Isabel Limon.
Isabel?
Limon.
Alcohol enforcement is the same type of thing. We get an allotment from the state, and then in order to keep that, in order to afford the person that takes care of that for us, DUI enforcement, then we are required, we do have to put a little bit in from the general fund to make that balance. And again, that we generally just balance it out to zero. On the 911 fund, Now this 2024 budget may change a little bit. We haven't finalized any numbers as far as this consolidation effort that's going on. So you may see a budget amendment come through just depending on when we get that finalized, because we'll have additional revenues that come in from the other cities that are participating. We'll also have additional costs related to that. And so this picture here would be more just if we were to continue the way we are, which we all know we're not going to be doing that. But again, that was, I think, more like July when they're anticipating pulling that all together. I know they're working really hard on it. So these numbers will change, and we may be able to get them changed before we actually adopt the budget in June, because we'll know a little bit more as we get closer. We've got the strike force, the Metro that does theirs. Most of their stuff is funded through grants, you'll see, and then there are some assessments on cities that don't provide officers. So you have, I had some more stats here, and maybe we don't need to run all the way through them, but it's good to know that that program is mostly funded through grants. We have one person that we have on the payroll there that's on the actual strike force payroll. That's their administrative assistant. And then there's overtime and things that run into that personnel number. Most of the rest of this is buy money they use to go out and basically do deals and run the program. So on the RDA, so you're all aware of the three separate areas: RDA, EDA, and CDA. I didn't have a slide on the CDA here, but the RDA side of it, after that, the dust settled on that with the school district. They didn't renew for their full portion. We'll anticipate $720,000 still coming off of that. And then we have half of the salary and benefits of the person who's running that, which is Lon. And then we have affordable housing there. I call this debt service, but really it's payback agreements that are in there. Then if we look down to what we have available to us in the RDA, we have unassigned amount, 1.4, committed, 500,000 on the UTA parking structure over here, and then $1,004,000 available for affordable housing within the development area.
Maybe just a quick comment on that. This afternoon, Lon and I had a chance to have a productive discussion with the individuals involved with the potential project we talked about a while ago, and that things appear to be very favorable still in moving forward, working through the upper channels, corridors of power in the tenant to get final approval and signature on documents. So that was positive, and so we'll be hearing more about that hopefully in the next 30 to 60 days of
Good.
positive. They reached out to us to let us know if it's progressing well.
Was the money we fronted Young, because I see that going up pretty nice, it's pretty good. Is that EDA or RDA?
RDA.
RDA.
Yeah. And then you'll have, there's money in this current year's budget for the JL Ventures.
Yeah.
Up there in the EDA, so that's the other project. That was a large project there.
Can you go back to that RDA and then the affordable housing? So we have the 878 for 23 and the 1 million for 24. This is the money that goes to developers for having some type of affordable housing component in what they're doing, correct?
Yes.
And this is not to be confused with the other affordable housing initiatives we have, like with, down payment assistance and things like that, the CDBG funds.
Right.
But maybe I'm saying the same thing. I hope I don't confuse things, but the state law requires that a certain percentage be set aside. So all of these dollars, I don't think may necessarily be. They're set aside and earmarked based on the state requirement that 20% of what you collect has to go to affordable housing. I don't think that necessarily means, does it, that we have committed those funds.
Oh, no, they're not committed at all.
So we're into the fund balance. I didn't know if you were thinking we already made a commitment of those. Okay, I
No.
apologize then.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of it as the fund, so it's available for those purposes.
At this point on affordable housing, the only commitment we have is this 18,000, and that's for the Case Crossing apartment building that's over there. So that was part of the original agreement when that went in, is we would take part of what they pay, and that would be their share back. So,
Next year will be the last payment for that.
and that next year's the last payment on that. Okay.
Yes.
Is there discussions going on with other projects to use that affordable housing money?
I would be the one to answer that.
There have been, like on the downtown project on South Main, there have been discussions previously about the possibility of, if there was a low mod component to that, that there might be funds available and that those were declined. So my recollection, so.
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of townhomes in that, and they're not affordable.
Correct.
So if we could see, I'm curious if the city is working to promote that with plans and when developers come in with development plans.
Yeah, I think Ron could speak to it more, because I think we do talk about that. We don't have the ability to direct it, obviously, and some Case Creek that you were talking about, they did it and did it fantastically. You couldn't tell one from the other, you know, that's how the new developers do it, but,
There may be some with the triangle development if that happens.
those are the old banks.
Yeah.
that are
We're hoping
downtown.
that will. There's been conversations with them, so not sure.
I think it will. That's good. Good question.
I think you'll see more and more developers, if they know that there's funding there, and that they can, I guess, work with it. I know some of them have approached me about somehow doing like a compensation back to them for identifying X amount of properties. But maybe rather than keeping it all towards multi-housing, look at expanding that to single homes. So if the developer comes in and builds, 10 homes, 2 of those need to be affordable homes. And look at how we can work a program up that way. If that's possible, so I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we look at this. But the fact that rather than focus it all on multi, it would be nice to kind of look at the single family home options as well. Especially since now with the state, you have to, any of the funding that's available for the new home buyer, it's all on new construction of homes, right? So if you can incentivize the builders to follow up with that, that'd be great.
The difficulty with this is the way the state code is written right now is this money is only allowed to be spent within the RDA boundary.
Yeah,
And so that's why you're kind of limited to the
that makes sense, yeah.
multifamily.
Okay, we talked a little bit about the jail ventures project up in the EDA. That's the big thing that's going on up there. Still, we've been able to accumulate a reserve there for other potential projects that would come into that area. In the impact fee fund, I gotta look at my chart here and make sure. Oh, right. This is the chart I was trying to find, but I'll look at this one for a minute. The main thing to look at in the impact fee fund is just that it has been very robust up through 2022, the amount of impact fees that have come in just simply because of the amount of building that's come in as well. We're anticipating those amounts coming down for this upcoming year. Yet we did still have a number of projects that we talked about the other day, because these are all general fund projects, money that's coming out of the impact fee fund that's going into the CIP fund. So you have parks, streets, and public safety being the dispatch center over there. As far as reserves go, in those funds. At the end of 2024, we anticipate that transportation would have 800,000, parks 400,000, and public safety 200,000. Then you have water and storm that are, the water impact fee, we'd anticipate that being down a bit as well. And storm being fine going into the future because it's been higher in the past. Now, we don't necessarily want these impact fee balances to be high, and we've been able to accomplish a lot of projects over the last several years when there's been a lot of impact fee money coming in. And that's the point, right? Development occurs that has an impact on these systems, and it gets spent to increase the capacity of those systems. Anyway.
There's an expiration date on, in fact, it's a
6 years, right? And so that's why I say it's not necessarily bad to have the balances go down. You don't want them to stay high for too long because then we start getting accused of collecting more than we need, right? And so we've done a good job of, like I said, spending it on projects as the development occurs, which is when the need occurs. So that's a good position. The Class C road funds for the last couple of years have been strictly dedicated to maintenance. And I don't think I was able to get that maintenance schedule into my slides, but there's a whole schedule that I can send you if you like that details out slurry seals, overlays, chip seals, replacements, crack seals, and they've got them all scheduled out. And engineering has a map that shows each individual street and the different colors and everything. And so if you're interested in that, I'm sure Steve Jackson or Terry Coburn could provide that.
Do you see, I mean, this is a totally advanced question, but do you see that they have more necessity for these types of street maintenance when you have kind of the high temperatures, low temperatures, high temperatures, lots of water?
Oh, yeah.
So are we gonna see more street maintenance issues, not issues, but will we need more funding for that?
Definitely. In fact, I was just going to say that in addition to all of the BNC for the last several years going to maintenance, last year we supplemented it you supplemented it, 407,000 this year out of Prop 1. We're proposing to supplement of 528. That's just to do basic overlays, potholes, resurfacing. That's not any new construction. So, and we're very, we've brought that study to you before from Utah State.
Yeah.
We're making a little bit of into that, but we're basically trying to hold us steady at the worst case. So, and that number will continue to go up, just to maintain status quo. So we could probably spend, I'm talking Public Works, but keep pointing over there, I guess they're not here tonight, but we could probably spend double what we do now on maintenance and put it to good use, which would be smart and prioritize and grade the streets. But the demand for just basic maintenance, not even new construction, is well above what's provided through BNC, which is part of the frustration. Every year they talk about doing something, and yet we, at the state level, we don't see. Sometimes we see just the opposite. We see threats that if you don't act a certain way, you will pull some of your BNC, and they're not even related to each other. But just to accommodate the drive and whole electric vehicle, and that article the other day was talking about that. They don't pay any gas taxes, so how do they contribute to the roads? What's the balance there? This was a national policy discussion, not a state, but at some point you would think that there'll have to be a little bit of revamping of that to true it up and how we pay for streets.
I think the state's reviewing that now, as far as electric vehicles. Comes to this consensus.
A question about street maintenance and the budget with the snowplows and the extra salt and how did we do that? Or have we figured out how much that costs yet?
Yeah, we're way over budget.
Yeah. Like, where's that coming from?
Attorney's office.
That's why they're not here.
There's
Can't
more
carry
saying, but
carry for a snowplow.
I would imagine here pretty soon they'll be bringing a budget amendment forward to
Yeah.
increase that budget because the entire public works budget, if they only go over a little, then there's maybe a little bit of wiggle room each year, but on a year like this, they I'm sure we'll see an amendment here at the end of the year to true up their budget for what they've had to spend on that kind of stuff.
Well, I know Paul was saying, you know, those bays where they have all the salt up there, they'll go through half of that bay in one day. So basically, you know, it's taken, what, 2.5 days to get through a week.
But thank goodness
Yeah,
we have bays full of salt
yes.
because the roads are, they're done well.
Prop 1 Transportation Fund, anticipate that go up just a little bit. It kind of tracks sales tax. So if we were to say, you know, 3 to 4% sales tax this next year, Prop 1 will track that pretty close. We've got the streets projects and then parks projects. This other transfer to capital projects is, you know, if the project's going to be just, it's a one source funding, we keep the money within this fund. If we're gonna have multiple funding sources on a project, then we'll pull it out of this fund, move it over to the capital projects fund. That's the reason for the transfer. We try and, you know, we started out a year ahead on this fund as far as having the money in hand. And so that's kind of keeping us there at this point. So that we'll always have the money and then plan the projects or then plan to spend the money. Same thing with the ramp fund. You know, we try to have the money in hand and then recommend an amount that the ramp commission can recommend to you. And they actually brought that amount up a little bit in their recommendation, you know, to this year up, you know, 1.9 to 2.1 to 2.4, but we should still, even though we're using a little bit of the balance, we should still have what I would consider a year's worth of funding in hand. So that puts us in a good position. This is just a summary of the capital projects fund, which is we take money from the general fund, impact fees, ramp, Prop 1, outside funding sources, and we throw it into this fund to keep track of that list of projects that we went over on the all-day meeting, which is, you know, every large project across the city. So those being, you know, $12 million worth of proposed new funding on projects. The fund balance in that fund really doesn't mean much because it's just money in for approved projects and the projects get spent. We do accumulate funds in there from time to time, and, you know, like for example, in the police building, we had accumulated funds in there. We would anticipate moving over some of the funding from the COVID era over to this area and earmark it on a project of some kind at some point as well. I think this might be the last one I have, the debt service fund. And this again is just one of those things where it's money in. You know, we have some money from the general fund. We have money from park impact fees to cover the park bond that's out there for, I think, this year, 2024 and 2025, then that'll go away. And the amount that's paid out on the Utopia debt reserve replenishment. And the amount that we fund out of the general fund has stayed consistent for a number of years now, and this amount that we get from UIA is consistently going up. Alex could report on that better than I could, but it's anticipated that it'll go up even more than what, I've only put a number in here to balance, you know, and I haven't put a full amount in because the full amount doesn't need to go in there of the amount that they send to us. So, and then those reserves, one is restricted, it's gonna stay there until this bond goes away, and the others, it's just in there for now.
Is that bond 20 years? The 2006?
The park one?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was. Yeah. So it ends in 2025, so it's, 20 years.
So that is you probably already know, but that is unheard of to have a city of this size with the budget we have, to have $400,000 worth of debt. That's what your auditor talks about all the time, but it's remarkable. And still do so many projects, you know, that the city has historically done, but I think there's the wisdom of councils in the past, you know, to establish a kind of a pay-as-you-go, frugal, but aggressive structure has really worked well. Staff certainly appreciates that. It gives us a lot of flexibility to adjust, you know, to changing situations and circumstances, but
Well, and then keep a good size fund balance as well for emergencies or for
Yeah.
things that come down the road that you don't plan on.
Well, not just that, just having UIA and Utopia, like having a debt service now paying us more money. That's also, I mean, not typical,
Yeah.
not atypical for that. It's cool to see.
So the next thing on the budget schedule will be the first meeting in May I don't have, unless the council and mayor come up with other questions before that, you know, we could schedule another meeting. I don't anticipate one from my side unless you have things that you bring up. So then we'll adopt the tentative budget on the 4th of May, but then based on that, changes can still be made if questions, concerns, whatever come up from you as a council, then we can adjust before we adopt the final budget. We'll hold the public meeting, the first meeting in June, and then adopt in the second meeting in June, is what we anticipate.
The top line for the residents, no property tax increase, no raise, no increases in any fees.
Right. The only thing you might get a question about, this just happened recently, and I think we talked about it, but it's that Kennington Place development that has about 55 homes in it. And in this next utility bill, we're adding a $20 landscape fee to their bill. So you might get some calls, just a heads up on
Yeah.
that.
Is it just gonna be in that bill?
The road,
Or is it
the road.
gonna be
No, it's every month.
It's the HOA one.
Right, it's the HOA one, and so
Give him Dave's number.
kind of good timing for me to tell you
That's
that.
Dave Thomas's.
Give my number.
Yeah.
That's his area.
Landscaping, yeah.
Could you turn that to green for a minute?
Yes, I can.
No, that's not.
But other than that, no other, we're not proposing any fee increases or property tax, anything like that, so.
Great ones.
it might be well if you choose to, but just as a reminder, the city will actually you'll be reducing the property tax rate because of the animal control thing. So that might be something for the citizens to know that with the transition of animal control to Davis County, Layton City has reduced its property tax to account for what, so they're not paying both the county and the city for those services. It's not a large amount, but it's, yeah, I think it shows good.
Raised theirs yet. Our county hasn't raised theirs yet, have they?
I think
I think they did.
Well, I don't know if they did whether they're doing it next year. I don't remember. So, they're on calendar year, we're on fiscal.
Yeah, they are.
I don't know if they did it, whether they're gonna wait, but anyway.
So what do we do, so technically, how do we vote, what do we vote on that? Do we approve that, or how's that done?
Yeah.
Other than just saying we're not,
It'll be part of the budget.
it'll be in the budget.
Right, and so it'll show, when I bring the budget with the proposed property tax rate, we'll discuss the fact that the certified rate was going to be this, and the rate that we're going to adopt is going to be whatever it ends up being, and that the difference is X amount of dollars, and then we'll most likely explain why. So yeah, that'll be all part of the adoption process.
Great.
I think we're good, right?
That's all I have.
Thanks for your help.
Thank you. By the way, thanks to all of you for visiting my department today. That was very appreciated. I know the staff, they appreciate the, pat on the back and to know from the leaders that they're doing a good job. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Got good work, appreciate it. All right. We do have one more item on our work meeting, which is a closed door meeting that I need someone to make a motion to go into a closed door meeting. One second.
Make a motion, we go into a closed door meeting.
Second.
It's been moved in a second. We now proceed to our closed door session.
Welcome everyone out to our Layton City Council meeting this evening. It is April 6th and our start time is 7:02. We appreciate your patience here. We also want to acknowledge all those in the audience and for the right reasons too. We're glad to have you with us tonight. First off, we'd like to start our meeting with a prayer and a pledge. And just like any other type of teamwork, we take turns sharing that opportunity here amongst myself and the council. And so tonight, I'm going to turn the opportunity over to Councilmember Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'll offer a prayer and then invite everyone to rise for the pledge. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful to be able to gather here this evening to conduct the business of this great city. We're grateful, Father, for the opportunity to live in this area. We thank Thee, Father, for the many people who work hard to make this a great place, the citizens who volunteer their time to make it a better place, the city employees who go above and beyond what they need to and what is required of them. Father, we're grateful for public servants, public safety officers that work to keep our neighborhoods safe, to help us in times of disaster and problems in our lives. Father, we express our gratitude for the moisture we've received this winter. We know it's much needed, and we recognize Thy hand in blessing us with it. Father, with the moisture, we are aware of the concerns of flooding, and we pray that we will all be vigilant as we enter into spring and watch out for our neighbors. Father, we're very grateful for this opportunity to be here, and we ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
If you'll please rise and follow me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Council, we have 4 sets of minutes that we need to adopt. If there's no corrections to them, I would look for a motion to accept these minutes, and if you could, just go ahead and read them for the record.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes for Layton City Council meeting, special meeting, January 10th, 2023. Minutes of Layton City Council work meeting, January 19th, 2023. The minutes of Layton City Council work meeting, March 2nd, 2023. And the minutes of the Layton City Council meeting on March 2nd, 2023.
Okay. Is there a second? Second. Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt the minutes as written. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to our municipal announcements. So I know that usually we have some from at least 2 of our members. So if one of you would like to go ahead and take the lead and announce.
Sure. I have a couple of announcements as usual. What I would like to announce first is that across the street on tomorrow night at Davis Arts Council will have their small stage concert, and the group performing will be Y5. Also, on Pitch Performing Arts, they have their Fairy Tale Trail coming up on April 14th. This is a free event, and it's from 5:30 to 7:15 p.m., so you can bring your kids out, and they'll get to see some fairy tale folks.
Where is that event going to be held?
It's going to be at their location on Pitch Performing Arts, just on Main Street. And lastly, the Communities That Care, they're going to be sponsoring their Parents Empowered event, or campaign, excuse me. It'll start up in May, and it will be at Surf and Swim. So you'll start to see some signage, and there will be an event to kick that off. Parents Empowered is a group that we partner with, and CTC is a group that is focused on preventing youth drug and alcohol use as well as suicide prevention. So you'll start to see some of that signage over in the Surf and Swim in May.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
The Parks and Recreation Department are working very hard in preparations for summer. I know we haven't quite hit spring yet, weather-wise at least, but 4th of July is right around the corner, and the Parks and Recreation, they're working hard to provide a really good parade as they have in the past, and they're looking for floats. So open to businesses, different organizations, youth groups, anyone that would like to provide or prepare a patriotic float, large, small, it doesn't matter. Registration doesn't start for another month till the 1st of May, but you can contact the Parks and Recreation Department if you're interested. They do have some opportunities that could include waiving the fee to register your float and up to $300 to build the float. So really, we're excited, as we always are, for the 4th of July, and be thinking about it now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. One thing I'd like to mention, and I know that we've tried to make sure everyone's aware of it, and of course, you know, we thank Councilmember Roberts for his prayer, but as we deal with the flooding or the potential of flooding, I do want to make it known that our Public Works Department up on Fairfield Road, we've been announcing this, but you are eligible to be able to go up and do your own sandbagging, and we ask is that you go into the front office first, make sure you give them your name and address so they can kind of keep track, and then they'll have someone go out to the sandbagging area where you can fill up the bags. But along those lines, as we're dealing with any of the excess moisture, and I know that we definitely want to get it away from our homes and try to prevent any internal flooding. But those of you that do have sub pumps in your homes or are having to set up pumps, we kindly ask that you please do not have them disperse into the sewer system. The North Davis Sewer District is not set up to be able to handle that much volume. And to give you an idea, on average, they have about 24 MGDs a day. Currently, they're averaging about 57. So already they're more than double than what we should, and we're not even into the serious part of the moisture that's going to come off that hill. So if you have any questions on that, please reach out to our Public Works Department. They can help you guide that water or help you know where you need to take that water. But quite honestly, all you need to do is, if you can, get it to the curbs. And from there, it will go downstream. It will go into our storm drain system, which the city's been very proactive in the past to make sure that we keep all those storm drains as, I guess, functional as possible. In fact, I do know that we've had accolades from the North Davis Sewer District that we are one of the cities that have been very vigilant about making sure our linings are good. So just know that we're trying to do all that we can, but honestly, it's an effort on all of our residents as well. And we're here to help and to and answer any questions you can. But at the same time, just please make sure you guide that water in the right direction. So with that, I also want to make one more announcement, and that is, well, we've got two. On April 15th, we're going to do the Sound the Alarms event, which they're still looking for volunteers that want to go out and help install fire alarms in homes. If you have a home that you know you don't have a fire alarm in and you need one, please call the Red Cross. Is that right, Natalie? Call the American Red Cross and let them know that you're in Layton and that you would like them installed in your home. You can have up to 3 of those, but it's a one-day event with full-on effort to make sure we try to protect our citizens. I mean, because it's known that if you can, that fire alarms, most of the fires that occur in the evening, that there's only a 50% survival rate if you do not have a fire alarm installed. So we just want you to know, again, we're looking after our residents. And then lastly, many of you are aware of our nice rail trail that we have out on the west side, the DRNG. And just to celebrate that monumental trail, there will be a Golden Spike bike ride on May 13th. So they're looking for everybody to kind of ride their bikes on that trail, and there's going to be a big celebration at Station Park. So you're going to have people coming up from Provo and from Ogden and all of us in between, and hopefully they'll have a nice, fun celebration at Station Park. Again, that date is May 13th. So, Council, does anyone else have any announcements? Okay. Seeing there's none, let's go on to kind of like one of our highlights that all of us enjoy as far as being here on the council, and that's the opportunity to recognize certain individuals or organizations. And it's our verbal presentations portion. And tonight, we're very honored to have our state 6A Layton High boys wrestling team with us. We want to acknowledge them on their achievement. We appreciate you putting Layton on the map on a state level. And it looks like by the stats there that you guys did an admirable job going into that, and that there was no question when you look at the total team score as far as what was it, 272.5 to it was Layton's score versus the second place only had 178. So good job there. And so tonight we want to acknowledge the team, and we do that by a proclamation. Typically, I would be the one that would read that proclamation, but we have a council member that actually wrestled for Layton High. So I'm actually going to turn the time over to Councilmember Dave Thomas to read that proclamation so that you guys can understand how much we really appreciate you.
Well, before I read the proclamation, I did wrestle for Layton High the first year they had a wrestling program, and the next years. But our coach was he worked in the office. He knew how to wrestle. We didn't have a wrestling coach. So the first time we wrestled against Bonneville, all 12 of us got pinned because we didn't know what a move was. But anyway, we learned. But do we have the 144 here? The weight? Oh, well, then never mind. Go, you guys go ahead and take off. That's what I wrestled, 144. And I heard he took state. Yeah, that was good. I wrestled the state championship. He was from Ogden High. He was blind, too. But he was a pretty good wrestler. Yeah, they never told me he was blind until after I got on the mat. And then you're thinking, how do you wrestle a blind guy? Well, you don't. You pinned me in 32 seconds. So, anyway, that tells you how good I was. I'm glad you guys, especially beating Pleasant Grove, because they're, between you and them, you are the two powerhouses for many years. And they get a good run, and we stop it. And I've watched many matches down there at Utah Valley. So, anyway. Let me read this. Whereas Layton High School's 2022-2023 wrestling team experienced unparalleled success within the state this year. And whereas the Layton High School wrestling program is centered around hard work, dedication, honor, class, and pride. And whereas the Layton Lancers outscored their opponents in dual team meets 770 to 76. 256. So did you stack the team figure?
Throughout the course of
Yeah. And that's great. No, I need to finish this. I think I'm supposed to. Whereas of these wrestling Lancers, 24 qualified to wrestle in the state championship meet. 11 team members placed
in the state meet. 3 were individual state champions. 2 team members received recognition as All-Americans, and 2 were ranked in the top 5 in the nation. Wow. And whereas the Layton High School coaching staff was also recognized, with Coach Adam Fager being named the 6A Region 1 Coach of the Year. And whereas the Lancers dominated in the state championship meet as they scored 272.5 team points, 94.5 points ahead of second place, and winning 3 of 5 championship matches. And whereas the 2022-2023 Layton High School wrestling team had fun together, built camaraderie, and produced some of the greatest leadership to come together as they represented not only their school but the community of Layton. It is therefore proclaimed that Layton City recognizes Layton High School wrestling team as the 2022-2023 6A state champs. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused, serious? I'm not reading that. Right on, you won. I would like, I don't know, oh, you go ahead. Sorry, Mayor.
Okay.
This is the mayor. She was like,
Stop right there. Okay. I would like to acknowledge the coach. So Coach, if you could come up here to the podium, and I will actually give you the official proclamation that you can have at the school. And then if you could, call your players up and have them come around and shake the council's hand. And once they're done, you swing in through here and we'll make sure you get a treat. So.
First, Kyle Hayes. Took 3rd in state this year at 113. Wyatt Kinney is a state qualifier and a team captain for us. Ron Yates. Cole Fenwick took 5th in state for us. Noah Bull took 3rd in state for us. Dawson Pimentel, he's state qualifier for us. Tyler Croston, one of our heavyweights. Gage Smith, one of our heavyweights. Dawson Paskins, one SBO. He was SBO too. Yeah, John. Yeah, John Inagaki. Gage Croston. Maddie Galvez, our manager. Cecily, what's your last name? Cowley, I knew that. She's another manager. We got Mike Harnish, another coach. Anthony Quintana, another coach. Lee Garcia, another coach.
That's great. Okay.
Yeah, and that a lot of our team out of town on spring break, so sorry. But appreciate it. You want them up here, the team? You want me to? Oh, yeah.
They were supposed to grab them, but they didn't. So.
Hey, Layton.
All right. Okay, being that, yeah, I was going to say, you guys, just so you know. Where do we go out? Right here. Go ahead. You guys are welcome to grab a cupcake, and you do not have to stay for our meeting. We appreciate you taking time, especially on a spring break. You were willing to come here and share this opportunity. Yeah.
We can save this for this.
Thank you, gentlemen, and enjoy the rest of your spring break. Yeah, what break, huh?
Hey, just one.
Yeah, good job. Okay, so you just witnessed how cool it is to have one of our high schools here in our city be able to take a state championship. We appreciate the time, dedication, and effort that these young men put in. And I know that even though wrestling season is over, they're already starting training for next year. I mean, that's why they were able to take the state champion this year, is because they started right away. So we actually have one more acknowledgement that we'd like to do, and this is, again, just so valuable for our city. And we actually want to acknowledge all of those folks that have completed the emergency response, the CERT program. And so we're going to acknowledge all those graduates right now, and I'm going to turn the time over to Chief Kevin Ward to be able to make those presentations. And while he's coming up, I want you to know, once again, we definitely want to shake your hands, and you guys all get a treat as well. So make sure you grab one when you come through. Yeah, bonus.
A treat tonight, too. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, it is with great pleasure tonight that I'm blessed to be able to present your graduates from the most recent Community Emergency Response Team program we have here in Layton City. Layton City is blessed to have outstanding fire, EMS, and law enforcement services. But in the event of a disaster, public safety personnel will be overwhelmed by the response necessary in the community, even though we have great, robust mutual aid within our region. This is where the concept of having trained community emergency response teams, or CERT, bridges the gap. The CERT program educates volunteers about disaster preparedness for the hazards that may impact their area and trains them in some basic disaster response skills, such as fire safety, light search and rescue, team organization, disaster medical operations, and disaster psychology as well. CERT offers a consistent nationwide approach to volunteer training and organization that professional responders can rely on during disaster situations, allowing the professional responders to focus on some of the more complex tasks. This is accomplished through 9 training modules, the last of which involves a simulated disaster in which trained CERT members now must place their training in action. Layton City's CERT program is led by Layton Fire Department Public Education Specialist Natalie Tholen, who's joined me here at the podium. We are blessed to have Natalie lead this program. She's been recognized by the state of Utah for her involvement with CERT, and then another ancillary program we have within our city called Fire Corps that provides fire and life safety education programs in the school to over 14,000 kids, I think, and as well as providing a major incident rehabilitation services if we have a large-scale event. Over the years, Layton City, through its volunteer instructors and fire department staff, we figured we've trained over 3,500 community members.
Wow.
That is outstanding in this state, and there's very few places that have near that number. Even some much larger cities cannot boast that they have that many people that have been trained over the years in the CERT program. For this class of instructors, we want to thank, in addition to help Natalie with this program, is Michael Tholen, Carol Childers, Sandy Moss, and Floyd Gowans. So they took their time to volunteer to help teach this class to everybody and get them through this program. So tonight we're going to recognize the latest graduates of the CERT program that are willing to volunteer and serve in their community in the event of a disaster. So as I call their names, I'll have the graduates come forward to be recognized by the mayor and council. We'll have you come back around, just as the wrestling team did there, and then we'll have you just proceed on out, grab a cupcake on the way, and then proceed on out and get your certificate out there. So I'm going to read the names of everybody. We realize that it is spring break and several of these people are not going to be here, but we want to go ahead and recognize that. But as you hear your name called up, please come up and come around behind me and greet the mayor and council. The most recent graduates are Tim Semedini, Heidi Semedini, Stephanie Coots, Larry Jones, Alan Rose,
Hey, that one.
Michelle, Michelle Winward, Jeffrey Denning, Roger Tansey, William Fishman, Morgan Charles, Michael Jones, Chloe Everell, Elizabeth Cloward, Lisa Bark, Sonic Puri, Happy for class. Well, thank you again, all our graduates. Thank you for your commitment to this program and going through the training and be willing to step up and help your fellow neighbors in the event of a disaster. So. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Hey, once again, we did want to express our appreciation for you being able to take your class, pass this class, to be certified, because like was mentioned earlier, you never know when we're going to need you, but we appreciate you doing this, so thank you very much. Okay, we'll now go on to our citizens portion of our meeting. This is where you're welcome to come up to either end of to one of the mics, be able to state your name and address for the record, and go ahead and speak your concerns or recommendations. Just know that the council will not comment. We will not deliberate here, but we will take everything that you say into consideration and make sure we follow up with our staff. If it's an item on the agenda, typically we don't, knowing that the rest of our agenda is consent items, we don't necessarily take comments under the consent items as well. So if there is something you do want to speak to, go ahead. Just if we do ask that you keep it brief. So the time's now yours.
Josh Solberg, 196 Swift Creek Drive. Some of you may be aware of some flooding that happened on my street, so I'm here on behalf of the neighbors with everything that happened last week. I guess what I'm here to ask for is information. Ever since last Thursday morning, I woke up to 4 inches of water in my basement, and we called the city, treated very rudely on the phone when we first called, because we couldn't identify anywhere else that the water was coming from and the significant amount of water. We did get a visit from the Public Works Department. They began pumping out in the street. They've been pumping for the last week straight. You guys are probably aware. And basement's dried out. You guys sent over a cleanup crew. We finally got the fans shut off in the basement. But what I'm looking for is information. What happened? What's going on? Why are we still pumping in the street? And what are we doing to prevent this from happening on our street as well as any other streets? Our street received numerous storm drain cleanouts visits this year, which I think was proactive anticipation of what is about to happen, as you've mentioned, Ms. Mayor. But where are we at? What is happening on Swift Creek Drive, and what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Okay. I think that this does require a response, and I know that our city manager will give you an update on that.
Yeah, thank you for your question. We just gave the council a briefing on that this evening, or earlier this evening. We don't know exactly right now where the water was coming from or what's caused it to discharge in this particular location. We think that it's coming off some of the agricultural fields where there were agricultural drainage. Before the area was developed, there's a lot of field drains that were put in to drain water off the fields so they could be, they could be tilled and harvested. Sometimes in the process of development, those are damaged or disrupted and can create a different pattern of how that water has traditionally flowed. We're not certain of that. As you said, we've been out there day and night, 24/7, basically running pumps to take the water out of the basements. The one thing that we'll actually start doing tomorrow is we're going to go out and do some excavation And then in the first of the week, we're going to actually put some pipes in where we believe, just preliminarily, we believe the water is coming from, and to divert it so that it drops into a storm drain system. So we're going to be putting a new manhole in the middle of a street and tying it into not a sanitary sewer, but a storm drain system. So we hope that will be we believe we have a pretty good idea where we think it's coming from, and hopefully we can just do it with one of these new pipes. If we have to do more, we have some other options as well to do that. But that's the plan right now. The effort has not been, initially the effort has been to stop the flow of the water and reduce the damage and impact on the homes. As far as doing the detective work to find out what exactly caused it, that will come later. The primary focus is to try to prevent damage to property. And so after that, we'll do a series of things. We have a series of methods and tests we can do to try to identify exactly where it's come from, and to try to make sure it doesn't happen again, or that the water's diverted. So that's where we're at right now. That's a thumbnail sketch of the discussion we've had, but we recognize it is a problem and has been a problem.
Thank you for the update. Is it possible that the residents on the street can receive more timely updates via email or text messages or phone calls, just so that we have an idea of what's going on as you guys are learning more information?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll certainly pass it on. I didn't inquire today what communication there had been. I assumed there had been good communication, but we can certainly do that, and you're welcome to reach out to the city as well and ask for an update on it. And the meeting I was at today with Mr. Gartside was there as well. We had our Public Works Director, our Assistant Public Works Director, one of our water foremen, who's been the primary service person out there, as well as our emergency management people. So there's several people in the city that have a clear understanding of what the status of it is and what the plan is going forward. So I'll definitely communicate that. There needs to be better communication to the residents. We know who you are and what the situation is.
Thank you.
Mr. Rush?
Mr. Solberg.
I know.
Sorry,
I'm
but yes,
sorry.
Mr. Rush.
Yeah.
I was unable to make it tonight.
I couldn't think of his first name. But anyway, he has a little information, and after tonight's meeting, I was going to call him.
Okay.
So he seemed to have a spike where he can get it to those who need it. So.
Yeah, I've been in regular communication with Jeff.
Okay.
And
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Dave.
Madam Mayor, would it be beneficial to have Mr. Solberg leave his contact information?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
So he seems to be the point of contact.
De facto,
It's your job. Sorry about that.
You don't need to give us your phone number over the mic, but if you could just pass it on to our city manager, then he'll make sure that the information is disseminated properly. Okay, does anyone else wish to address the council? Okay. You're welcome to. Just remember, we got to keep it brief if you could.
I'm going to make you all happy. United States Mail today at 1757 Gregory Drive. We got this. You know what it is? If you don't, contact your council. This came for the 14 areas of the plays and everything, which of course the Tudor families heads to there and goes to the Layton City Best Equa-Empia. So I saw that today in my mailbox, and I said, you know, I lived here for now 36 years, and I go on to many hundreds of activities, and you'll see it when I get there. So here it is, and I want to get a good ox for you guys. Yeah, the guys there at Recreation, you done great, okay? Yeah.
Because somebody left.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
I've known
thank you.
him probably for about 30 years. So I just come to do that and say hello to you and go to your Layton City, I should say, Summer Night Stars. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tudor. Okay, is there anyone else that wishes to address the council?
Hello, my name is Jessica Pham. I live on 123 North Swift Creek Drive. A little bit of a follow-up on that flood as well that had happened last week, Thursday. I also want information, but I also want answers and security in knowing that my neighbors and I are going to be taken care of. This was totally unexpected. I have an unfinished basement, and I was told that the flooding had happened due to exterior. Nothing on my foundation walls on the exterior had any type of water damage, and I was also told that my house is going to be fine. So, with that being said, there's a concern that some houses are going to be taken care of and other houses are not. I just want to clear the air. If there is a plan of some sort of contingency that my neighbors and I are going to be taken care of, that there is a preventative plan moving forward, because I love this city. My family and I have lived here for over 10 years. We have worked very hard. We believe in the American dream, and I want to make sure that my parents are safe. They are on the verge of retirement. I am their caretaker, and I want to make sure that my neighbors also feel the same amount of safety. Not only is Swift Creek Drive affected, there's also Cold Creek and Century Homes on Gentile as well. We do believe that this is within the same flooding. Is there any type of security that you can give us, yes or no answers, if there's some sort of plan that my neighbors and I are going to be taken care of moving forward as well as in the future?
Thank you.
I guess what I would say is the city has what we call a humanitarian assistance fund, and depending on the nature of the circumstances, we do offer assistance, financial assistance to people. One of the things that will be important is part of the detective work, if you will. That's not the proper term, but you understand what I'm saying. To establish is whether there is some failure in the systems of the city, meaning the pipes were plugged, weren't adequately sized, et cetera, or whether it's simply a result of the record moisture that has fallen, because the water table in the ground is significant. So we've had, in different places in the city, as an example, we've had flooding that has occurred in basements, but it has nothing to do with the system. It has to do with snow that's been downspouts that were running down the side of people's houses, right, which obviously isn't a very good thing. And it's just because the groundwater is so high that the soil is saturated and it's leaking into the foundations. That's a city problem because we care about it, but it's not a system failure. So our approach to that kind of a thing is going to be much different typically than it is if there's some part of the city's system that isn't functioning correctly. And that's what as I was saying to the other gentleman, is the first thing was to try to find out where the water's, to keep the water from doing additional damage. And then we'll start the process on an individual basis of trying to identify what's the source of it. Again, our history has been if the city contributed to that, if the systems didn't function properly or failed, then we have a claim process people can apply for, and as well as the humanitarian assistance. If we find that there's no system failure, it's just simply more water has come down than any of the systems could accommodate, or because of not wise use on the part of homeowners, again, where they've tied their land drain systems into systems that shouldn't, their downspouts into systems that shouldn't have been tied into, then there may be a different result for that. But we look at everyone individually and we take it very seriously. Our idea is to be fair to the residents. That includes both the residents who are impacted by disasters, and also be fair to the residents of the community whose funds are being used to address those disasters. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
The city has to wear both of those hats because this isn't money from an insurance company. This is money that gets spent from taxpayer dollars. So in your specific case, it would just be a matter of us knowing exactly what happened or trying to understand exactly what happened. It sounds like similar in the area, right? But that's the
Yeah.
process we typically follow.
Okay, so if I may follow up with the additional questions of the responsibility in this sense, because I was told that this is my responsibility, that I need to take care of this. So that's one concern. And the other thing too is that, yes, we all understand with the outrageous amount of a traditional Utah winter snow, this whole past storm was ridiculous. That yes, the sandbags are preventative, but from my understanding, looking at my home my whole floor is completely cracked, raised, concaved, and separated, which means that this tells me that this is underneath. My whole driveway is shifted. Our roads are also shifted. We truly believe that this is something that is happening underneath, and it's just a concern, like how have sandbags would even help us in this situation, because it wouldn't. Everything is underneath. So responsibility is anybody going to take responsibility of this? How do we move forward?
Well, as I tried to explain, I think what will, I can't answer that question directly because I don't know exactly, nor does the city at this point know exactly what the situation was. So it could be something very simple. It could be something very complex. It could be a failure in the city's systems. Okay, we hope that is not the case, but it certainly could be the case. It could be a failure of residents to maintain their property. Potentially, we do see that from time to time in the way they've tied systems in that shouldn't be tied in inappropriately. It may be something that was not installed correctly by a developer. Maybe there was supposed to be a land range system and it wasn't properly installed. So none of the comments are meant to be evasive. They're simply to say we don't know exactly what is causing this. We're trying to stop the water, keep it out of the houses, and then we'll go through a process home by home to try to identify what we think is the cause of that. And that may take some time. To do, but the city has a long practice of doing this. We live in an environment where we're subject to all kinds of potential disasters, and we've had this before. So we have a process that we have confidence in, and there's integrity in it. You know, we don't try to evade it. We care about the citizens, and like I say, on the other hand, we also care about spending taxpayer dollars and try to make sure there's a wise use of it. So I know that's not exactly what you're asking for, but in terms of a commitment, that it would be disingenuous to tell you I know the answer to the solution. But we'll look at it, and I think you're doing the right thing in communicating it. You can certainly do that with the mayor and the council. You can also reach out to myself or Steve, anybody in the staff, and we can share with you what we know at the time.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity.
What is your address again, ma'am?
123 North Swift Creek Drive.
Okay.
And then just one more comment to follow up is that I believe I also speak on behalf of my neighbors and I, especially the ones that couldn't make it, that we would all love to receive notifications. We do have a neighborhood directory, and if you need that access, we are more than liberated to give that to you via text and email.
Yeah, that would be very helpful if there's a way to communicate to a group at a time. If there's a spokesperson or a representative, that would be, the information can be disseminated through. We'd be happy to do that. If it needs to be individually, we could certainly do that as well. And if you knew who that is, maybe you could just whisper to Mr. Garside to write it on his
I will do both.
Steve is functioning as the attorney tonight. He's a former attorney, but he's actually our emergency management director and runs the department that handles the emergency, the claims and so forth. So he's a good contact, or you can contact me as well.
Okay.
But I will communicate the concern about lack of communication. That we can do better than that. And our folks are working 24/7. This is not the only area, as you can surmise. So basically, our crews have been running night and day to try to respond to and address flooding issues or potential flooding issues. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. I appreciate you listening to me. Have a great night.
Okay. Thank you very much.
If you will, if you guys will wait till after, talk, okay? Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Is there anyone else that wish to address? Okay. Once again, make sure you state your name and address for the record.
I'm hoarse. I've been speaking over fans for a week, and I can't quite get my voice back. My name is Michelle Stander. I live at 106 Swift Creek. I brought some pictures to show you the impact of the flooding. That's also why I'm here tonight. So I'm going to show you guys. This is our neighborhood, and it is right here. There is a manhole.
You guys want to gather around, you can.
Right here, and a manhole right here.
Mm-hmm.
So of these houses, we have 14 homes. More than half of these 14 homes were flooded simultaneously on Thursday morning. Those that weren't flooded were also impacted. So we have these homes, these homes, these homes, these homes. This is my home right here. I was flooded. This home was flooded. This home was spared somehow. These pictures were taken less than 2 hours ago. So that's the generator that's on each side of the street. There's another side of the street. This is the amount of water that's coming out of them every 30 seconds. It's a lot of water. So I'll let you guys look at this and pass it around just so you can kind of see. I felt like this portrayed the scope of what we were looking at. So this street wasn't impacted, nothing there. Everything over here north also not impacted. These homes right here are actually 6 feet lower in elevation than where I am at, and they were impacted. So it's just between point A and point B that's the problem, and that's where I wanted to make you guys aware. So just to let you look at those, I'll go back to the microphone.
I'm actually going to take this map. If you're leaving it with us, I'd like to have our Mr.
Yeah,
Garside
you're
have
welcome
this.
to look at it. I got it from the county. So I believe the flooding was preventable at the city level. I have done everything in my power to make my home void of any water. I have a French drain around the perimeter. I have giant holes in my yard to make sure that I don't have any water next to my home. This wasn't that my downspouts were too close to my house or that I was doing something inappropriate or anything like that. Half of my home flooded. Half of my living space. I want each of you to think about what your home would look like if half of it flooded in one morning and you had to simultaneously stop the flooding of unknown source and get rid of all of your belongings and try to move them and save them in a matter of one morning. I'm getting a little emotional about this. The flooding never should have happened. I can't articulate the emotional and physical stress that we've all had over the last week. It has been phenomenal. This is spring break, as it's been pointed out many times tonight. This is not at all how my family imagines spending spring break. I have piles and piles and piles of things in my family room. I can't even get from my front door to my back door without tripping over things, all because I don't know if the water is going to come back. I want to say I think Layton City can do better. On Thursday morning, there was one city employee, and that is the only person from Layton I have heard from in an entire week. Besides these last 20 minutes, I have learned more. That same employee, I get really emotional and shook by this. I have some people who are important in my life who don't look a lot like me, but I believe that that's not their defining feature. And so when a Layton City employee asked me if this is how a specific person lived in a house, he used a racially charged comment to describe them. I never wanted to hear that from a Layton City employee. I never wanted to be in a position where my home was flooding and I'm also hearing racist comments all at the Layton City level. I think we can all do better than that. I really am concerned about what the results are and who's going to compensate the damage. I appreciate UDK. I really do. They aren't as responsive. I know that they still are really behind because they have they said 5 crews just on our street. And there's another company handling another home on the street. And as much as my family was devastated, and I know you've heard from the Solbergs tonight, there are more that were more impacted than I was. I invite each of you to go and talk with them and find out what happened. This was entirely preventable and extremely devastating to everyone on the street, and I really would like to make sure this doesn't ever happen again.
Thank you very much. And I think you can see by the concerns here by the staff and the willingness of us to get out there and try to mitigate the problem. Obviously, it's not something we can solve overnight. However, we will make sure that we'll continue to do our best and to try to help everybody out there. I mean, it's like the city manager said, it's going to take an assessment, but for right now, it's a matter of just dealing with the water. And I'd highly encourage you to I know it's uncomfortable in living with clutter, but just try to keep it up out of the water so that it's not damaged. I mean, I understand that. I do have some very close friends that are going through the same thing. So I think most of us here, feel your pain, and I'm sorry for it, but we will do the best we can.
Thank you.
Okay. I think at this point we could probably move on unless anyone else has anything more they'd want to say. Okay, thank you very much. Again, like I said, we'll make sure that the staff stays in contact there. We'll now go on to our consent items tonight. Our consent items we've got 3 of them on the agenda, and these items are routine in nature, and we can actually act upon them in one single motion as far as the governing body here. So we're going to start out with item number A, which is going to be presented by Mr. Steve Garside regarding the acceptance of material terms of the second series of National Opioid Settlement Agreement.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. As the council is aware, due to the devastation that the opiates had on society, there was some litigation, and the result of that litigation, there were some settlement funds for the state and for counties, particularly to be able to use to offset and mitigate those impacts. And the funds are to be used exactly for that. The formula that they use is based on the amount of opiates that were distributed in our area, the number of people that suffer from an opiate use disorder, and the number of actually overdose deaths that have occurred in the area. And so that's how that funding is shared. And so by our participation in this, then Davis County will have the opportunity to participate in those funds and use that to, again, offset the crisis that has happened. So we recommend the council adopt the resolution 2321.
Okay, sad that we even have to consider this right now, but I recognize that, we might as well participate if need be. So, council, do you have any comments on this before we move on? Okay, I'd like to go on to item number B, which is an amendment plot for the Heritage Park and Layton Hills subdivision. This item is going to be presented by Mr. Lon Kral, and actually he has the next item as well. So, Lon, you're welcome to stay up there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. First item is the request to amend the plat for Heritage Park at Layton Hills, First Amendment subdivision plat. Randy Breyer, Beyer, is representing Knowlton General LC for property at 1481 North Hillfield Road. Let me get this on. Which is shown in the red hash line there on the screen. Is requesting to remove Lot 3 from the Heritage Park at Layton Hills Commercial Subdivision. And that's the upper part that has the building on it already. The owner who owns both of these pieces of property would like to create a new subdivision, combining these lots, and eventually create a mixed-use subdivision. With the new subdivision, actually, there's 500 square feet of private property still in Hillfield Road, and part of that new subdivision, it will be dedicated to the city and no longer in the middle of the road. On March 14th, the Planning Commission reviewed this subdivision and recommended approval, and staff also recommends the same, supports the Planning Commission's recommendation. With that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions? Okay, let's go ahead and go on to item number C, which again is another amendment plat. This is for Antelope and Maine Commercial Subdivision.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The second item is a request to amend the Antelope and Maine Commercial Subdivision First Amendment plat. Elliot Smith, who represents Antelope Layton LLC, is requesting to amend the plat for property located at approximately 2016 North Main Street. The request is to amend what is now Lot 2 and to create 2 lots out of Lot 2, as shown on this plat in front of you. The property with this amendment does meet all the minimum square footages and requirements of the zone. It will create 2 20,000 square foot lots. For those who may not know, when Kmart went bankrupt, the city was in the process of amending their storage unit ordinance. Kmart basically filled all of their Kmarts with storage units, and so there was an issue at the time of them being able to do that. And then we went through a settlement agreement process. In 2018, that was signed between the city and Seritage. In that settlement agreement process, They had a plat that was proposed that showed a certain number of lots and buildings on the corner. The only reason I bring all of that up is that this is consistent with that settlement agreement, just so you're aware of that. They will have cross-access easements will stay in place that exist in the current subdivision. So the parking, if there are any parking issues, will be taken care of with the rest of the property. Again, on March 14th, the Planning Commission reviewed this proposal and also recommended approval. And staff supports the Planning Commission recommendation as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Council, any questions?
I think I have one question, not on this one, on the previous one.
On the Heritage
On
Park?
the amended plat for Heritage Park at Layton Hills subdivision. Can you remind me if what the current zoning is for that?
Two different buildings.
It's mixed use.
Okay. And the owner just wants to make that into one lot?
It will be two lots, the same subdivision, and then they do own both properties. The mixed use, in this case, could qualify because they own the existing commercial building on the north side of the same property.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
There's no proposal forward for this property yet, is there? Or is there an intent? I mean, it was.
This is a request
implied.
just to amend the original subdivision lot.
Okay.
Correct.
I was going to voice this before the vote, but I just want to echo, the same concerns that one of the planning commissioners mentioned that, and I've said it before on this road, I'm just have concern that we're taking a lot of our commercial area, retail area, and putting strictly housing in. We have a mixed use ordinance, but very seldom we get retail or commercial as a component of it. So just a concern, not necessarily means I'm going to vote no for this, but an ongoing concern, I guess, to think about for the future.
Okay, very good. Anyone else? Okay, seeing that there's no more comment, I'll bring it back then to the council to go ahead and take action on the consent items. And if you could just, there's one resolution, but if you could just state that, please.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve Resolution 2321, the material terms of the National Opioid Settlement Agreement, amended plat for Heritage Park at Layton Hills subdivision, and the amended plat at Antelope and Main Commercial subdivision.
Okay, is there a second?
Actually, I have a question. I know that's not proper.
It's okay, go ahead. Usually you second it and then you can open for discussion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Is there discussion?
Yes, and my apologies. I do know protocol.
That's okay.
I was trying to get my thoughts together, and we were moving quickly. I would actually like to be able to remove item B from the consent items, if possible, so that it could have its own separate vote. Is it too late to do that?
Usually we do that prior to, but if I would, I was going to say I'd have to entertain a substitute motion in order to do that. Is that correct, Mr. Garside?
Correct, or if it was a request to amend the original motion, one of those two processes.
Okay, so if you want to make an amendment to the original motion, then I'll ask Councilmember Bloxham if he'll entertain it or not.
Okay, would you entertain a substitute motion?
Remove it?
To remove item B from the, not from this consent items, but to be able to consider item B as a separate motion.
Okay. It's been moved in second that we go ahead and accept items A and B as our consent items. There, A and C, sorry. Good. A and C that we will act on as together, and then we'll turn around and vote on item B separately.
Thank you.
With that, I'll go ahead and ask all those in favor of items A and C under our consent items. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, we'll now deal with item B, which is the Heritage Park at the Layton Hills Mall subdivision, First Amendment. So all those in favor of accepting item B as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, there you have it. The count is 4-1. 4 in favor. So therefore, all items are passed on our consent agenda tonight. We do not have any public meetings. Council, do you have any unfinished business?
I actually do, Madam Mayor. About a month ago, a city employee who we see all the time around here, Joseph Hamblin, passed away. And I just see his face all the time when we come in here. Ever since I've been a member of the council, I've seen him out there, and he was always really warm and inviting and seemed like a super nice guy. And I was just really saddened to hear his passing. So I just wanted to mention it, that it's something that I've been thinking about, and I hope his family can find some comfort during their time of grief.
Very good. Thank you for that reminder, for bringing that up, because Joe was and always here when we were here and was good about cleaning up after us as well. So thank you, Councilman Bloxham. I'd also like to acknowledge in our audience tonight is our chairman of our Planning Commission. So thank you for attending tonight's meeting as well. So I do not have anything else. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Thomas, come on.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. There are additional cupcakes up here. Anybody who's still here who'd wish to have a cupcake, please come up and gather one. And enjoy your Easter weekend.